Like the Italian Renaissance, the Northern Renaissance was a period of ideas. We want to understand what those ideas are and who the people were behind them. Humanism in the Northern Renaissance had kind of a different attitude and approach compared to the Italian Renaissance. Remember that Italian Renaissance humanism was all about inspiration from classical Greece and Rome, and to some extent the application to society, but mostly the individual. In the North, you have a style of humanism called Christian humanism. Christian humanism still took the ideas of classical learning, but also brought in ideas from Christianity. And the thinkers of Christian humanism were especially inspired by the early Christian church. And so you have this sort of angle on humanism that's we really need to focus on religion, and most especially how those ideas can lead to social reform. The Christian humanists saw society in sort of, if not in a crisis, certainly in need of change, and the change brought on by those ideas from the classical world and Christianity. One of the important humanists you should know was Desiderio Sir Rasmus. Erasmus was a Dutch writer, so he's from the Netherlands, and probably his most famous work is In Praise of Folly. And it's a satirical work, so he's sort of poking fun at society. But also, he beyond that work, he wrote a lot to really people all over the 16th century Europe. He talked to some of the other Christian humanists. He talked to some of the Italian thinkers, and he's writing back and forth. And his writing is really well known. And he was really critical of religion at the time, what he saw as corruption in the church. A lot of people associate him with the Protestant Reformation, although he wasn't associated directly with the Reformation and didn't really participate in it. A lot of his writing sort of inspires some of those reformers, like Martin Luther later. Another important Christian humanist was Thomas More. Thomas More was an English writer. He worked in the English upper class. He was the chancellor in the court of Henry VIII. Probably his most famous and important work is Utopia. That word utopia is Greek, and this is actually kind of a play on words. Topia means land, and U, written by itself, the letter U means not, but also it is a homophone. It sounds the same as EU, which means good. So utopia means both the good land and the not land. And that's kind of what his book was about. He wrote about this idealized perfect place, and he described what he considered the perfect society. And in doing that, he was really criticizing society in Northern Europe at the time. How everyone seemed to be focused on wealth, how there was corruption across different parts of society. He wasn't seen as quite as radical as Erasmus, with whom he often wrote and talked to, but he was important in his own right. There were a few other writers to make note of. One is William Shakespeare, probably the best known writer in the English language. He was patronized by Elizabeth I, Queen of England, and he was, of course, well known for his plays and sonnets. But also, he did it from sort of this humanist perspective. If you look at his works, a lot of them focused on individualism, on some of the problems in human society, human faults, which go back to inspiration from some of the classical Greek and Roman writers. A lot of the topics he wrote about were from that classical period as well. Think Julius Caesar and Antony and Cleopatra. So we count him as one of these Northern Renaissance writers. An earlier writer was Christine de Pizan. She was a French writer, and she's known for her most famous work, the Book of the City of Ladies. And while a lot of humanists across both Italy and Northern Europe really focus mostly on men and how they should be educated, and in fact, people like Machiavelli sort of said that women didn't have much of a place in public society. Christina Payson defended women's place in society and argued that they should have equal education and more influence in public life. And so she becomes sort of an important touchstone in those ideas.